Evil in the sky, the blackened sky. The sky above the small, rural town of Hollow Grove had always been a gentle blue, unmarred by the chaos of modern life. It was a place where the whispers of the wind spoke of simpler times, and the old oaks stood as silent sentinels of the past. That was until the day the sky darkened and the tranquility of the town was irrevocably shattered. It began on an autumn afternoon, the kind where the sun casts long shadows across the land and the breeze carries a chill of coming winter. Martha Collins was the first to notice the change. She was tending her garden, her hands deep in the rich, earthy soil, when she looked up and saw it, a dark, swirling mass forming in the sky. It was unlike any cloud she had ever seen, an inky blotch that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. At first she thought it was a storm, an unusual formation, but there were no weather reports forecasting such a phenomenon. She ran to the town's general store, where the clamor of local gossip was punctuated by the rhythmic clink of the cash register. Martha burst in, breathless, and pointed to the sky. "What is that?" she asked, her voice trembling. The room fell silent as the townsfolk turned to look. Old Mr. Callahan, who had lived through more storms than he cared to remember, squinted at the sight through the store's window. "Looks like a bad omen," he muttered, though he tried to sound nonchalant. Martha's unease was palpable, and it wasn't long before the rest of the town was gazing up at the ominous spectacle. The sky, once clear and welcoming, was now a swirling vortex of darkness, as if the heavens themselves were being consumed by an unseen force. Two. That night, the first of the unsettling events began. The sky remained a perpetual twilight, a murky blend of dark purples and blacks that seemed to defy the natural order. There was no moon, no stars, just the endless swirling darkness, and with it came an unnatural silence, as if the world itself was holding its breath. In the silence, the townspeople began to hear whispers, faint and eerie, carried on the wind. They were not clear or distinct, but they seeped into the minds of those who listened too closely. Fear gnawed at their hearts, an inexplicable dread that seemed to grow with every passing hour. The first to fall victim was young Tom Harris, a bright-eyed boy of 11 who had always been curious about the world beyond Hollow Grove. That night, he went missing. His parents searched frantically, calling his name into the darkened streets, but there was no answer. They found nothing but a faint trail of disturbed leaves leading to the edge of the forest. The following days brought more disappearances. One by one, people vanished without a trace, leaving only their belongings behind. The town's once bustling streets grew eerily empty. The only sounds, the whispers in the dark, and the occasional crackle of unseen energy in the air. Third, Dr. Helen Shaw, the town's only physician and a rational woman by nature, was the next to investigate. She had spent her life grounded in science, and the inexplicable occurrences were a challenge she could not ignore. Armed with her medical kit and a sense of grim determination, she ventured into the woods, where the darkened sky seemed even more oppressive. As she moved deeper into the forest, the darkness grew thicker, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and she could almost make out words, a cacophony of dread and despair. Her flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that danced across the trees and created shifting, nightmarish shadows. Dr. Shaw stumbled upon a clearing, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. The clearing was adorned with symbols etched into the earth, ancient arcane symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In the center, a strange black stone stood upright, its surface slick and glistening as if it were absorbing the surrounding darkness. As she approached the stone, the whispers became a deafening roar, and she felt a cold, malevolent presence pressing against her mind. She could see shapes moving within the darkness, twisted amorphous forms that seemed to writhe and coil with an unnatural hunger. Then she saw it, a glimpse of something impossibly vast and terrifying. A void within the darkness that seemed to stretch beyond the bounds of reality. Her heart pounded, and she stumbled back, barely managing to escape the clearing before her sanity could be further consumed by the unspeakable horror that lurked within. Ify. The town's remaining inhabitants were now desperate. The once proud community had become a shell of its former self, with fear and paranoia driving people to the brink of madness. The local pastor, Father Samuel Thompson, gathered those who remained at the town hall, seeking solace in shared faith and desperate prayers. The darkness, Father Thompson said, his voice trembling, is not just a physical manifestation. It is a presence, an ancient evil that has awoken and seeks to feed on our fear and despair. His words were met with a mix of skepticism and fear, but they were all they had. The townsfolk, clinging to their remaining hope, decided to perform a ritual, a last-ditch effort to combat the malevolent force. They gathered ancient texts and artifacts, combining them with their own desperate prayers. The ritual was performed under the darkened sky, a collective act of defiance against the encroaching evil. As they chanted and performed their rites, the sky seemed to swirl more violently, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn asunder. The whispers grew louder, more chaotic, and the darkness seemed to pulse with a rhythm of its own. For a moment it felt as though the ritual was having an effect. The darkness wavered, and the whispers receded. But just as hope began to flicker, the sky erupted into a blinding flash of darkness, and a wave of indescribable horror washed over them. When the light receded, the town was eerily quiet. The darkness had not dissipated, but rather it seemed to have deepened. The people who had participated in the ritual were gone, their bodies left behind in unnatural poses, their faces etched with frozen terror. As the weeks turned into months, Hollow Grove became a ghost town. The few remaining survivors, those who had managed to escape before the final wave of terror, spoke of the entity in hushed, fearful tones. The darkness in the sky never lifted, and the whispers continued to haunt those who dared to listen. The once thriving community was now a place of desolation, its streets empty and its buildings slowly succumbing to decay. The darkness above remained a constant reminder of the unknown evil that had claimed the town, a never-ending swirl of malevolent energy. The few who ventured near Hollow Grove reported strange occurrences, unexplained phenomena, distorted reflections, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The town became a place of legend, a cautionary tale whispered among those who feared the unknown. In the end, the blackened sky of Hollow Grove remained a symbol of the unknowable, a dark void that defied understanding. It was a reminder that some forces were beyond human comprehension, that the darkness above was not just a physical presence, but an ancient, malevolent entity that thrived on fear and despair. The town itself faded into obscurity, a shadow of its former self. But the stories persisted, carried on the wind like the whispers that once haunted its streets. Hollow Grove became a warning, a testament to the dangers that lurk in the darkness above, waiting for the moment when they could descend upon an unsuspecting world and consume it whole.